everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliette Beauchamp, and I'm here with Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus, Macworld Executive Editor Michael Seidman, and a very special guest this week, Computer World Managing Editor for Features, Val Potter. We are live on Computer World LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments while we're discussing, please do leave them in the comments or the live chat, and we will do our very best to respond to you while we are live. And the topic of the day is device life cycles and knowing when it's time to upgrade. We talk a lot here about, the latest and greatest new product. And while it's, exciting when things come out, it doesn't always mean it's the right time for you to actually upgrade. So we thought we would dive into knowing when it's right, when to wait, and especially how that applies to, your IT team. How do you manage device upgrades and life cycles? So Val, I'm going to throw it to you first as our special guest. You have a kind of fun perspective here. So I'm going to hand it to you. Take it away.
All right. Thank you. I'm terrible at upgrading. I'm for a number of reasons. Partly, I'm a cheapskate. I do not like to spend money, but I also believe in quality. So, I'm not going to buy something cheap every couple of years. What I like to do is buy a really good phone and then hang on to it forever. So that's what I've done. I've actually only owned two smartphones in my life. One was the iPhone 4, which was an awesome phone.
The best ever.
And I held on to that for about 4 years. And then I bought an iPhone 6. And this is still my phone, however many years later. So I think that I bought this in 2015. Even I will admit this is too long. I should have upgraded a couple of years ago. In fact, Ken, I think I asked your advice a couple of years ago.
I was just going to say, where along the lines did I fail you?
Ken's had 25 iPhones between your iPhone 6 and now.
I will admit that, when it comes to upgrading, I am Ken, and I'm a serial upgrader. Okay. And it's a good thing that I am not running the requisition department for a company, because everybody would have the latest and greatest and newest, and the company would probably go bankrupt. So
yeah, pretty much.
There is a method to Val's madness. Somewhere betwixt and between her reluctance to upgrade and my love of upgrades, there's probably a rational answer. Michael, is that you?
Me? Am I the rational answer in this conversation? My advice to anyone who, all right, let's rewind for a second. So before the phone, the smartphone, the iPhone even, like upgrades weren't a thing we thought about until something broke. Like it wasn't.
That's a good point.
There's a new thing here, we should upgrade. Like I didn't get a new Mac until my old one stopped working in some way, or a car, or whatever it is that you have. And the smartphone, the iPhone first, changed the entire way we think of upgrades. With, first of all, there's an annual cycle that we know every year, and around the same time, we're going to get a new product. And the reason why we started thinking in terms of upgrading was because of smartphone contracts. So they were 2-year contracts that you paid over the course of 24 months. They subsidized the price of the phone to start. So you paid $200 up front for a $600 or $800 phone. And that price of the subsidy was built into the contract. So over the course of those 2 years, you were paying for the device itself and your data plan and phone plan. We didn't actually know that, carriers, and it wasn't like anything necessarily mischievous, but it wasn't transparent.
It was kind of embedded in your monthly bill or whatever.
Right. It was all there, and you weren't necessarily being gouged because you were getting a real high-end piece of hardware. But people thought, oh my God, this phone costed $199. I can afford that. And it did up front. Mm-hmm. Over the course of the 2 years, it cost you, $800 or $900, and now sometimes into the 2000s, depending on Ken, how much you get in your phone.
Not even I go that far.
So now, since T-Mobile started this and they pushed Verizon and AT&T, now everyone does it. They don't subsidize the price of the phone anymore. So we know what they cost, and we pay for that cost. You can spread it out over 24 monthly payments, which most people do. I do it through Apple, and a lot of people do it through Verizon or AT&T, whatever it is. And you pay for the price of the phone over a set number of months, 24 or 30 or 36, whatever it is. But we still have this baked into our head that, oh my God, there's a new iPhone and I really probably should get it. I mean, Val, I'll agree with you. The iPhone 6 is old. And the
I agree with
one,
that
the,
too.
the reason why I would tell
I
you
think
to
we can all
upgrade.
agree.
Yeah, no, it's a very old phone. I'm sure it works fine. I actually have one that I use. Well, my son uses sometimes. He has an iPad too, but it works. You know, it runs the apps that you need. My mom had an iPhone 6S for until just this past, I guess October. My dad upgraded and he gave her his old phone. So depending on what you need your phone for, an iPhone 6 is plenty good. That speaks to both how good the iPhone is, and it speaks to Apple's upgrade cycle with OSs, because unlike Android, that phone is on iOS 13, I think.
12. Yeah, it won't
12,
go
okay,
past 12,
12.
which is
Okay.
which is
Which
a
is still
big reason to
good.
upgrade. Yeah.
And Apple will push security updates as needed. If they're major risk and major vulnerabilities, they'll still push that. And so you have a pretty modern smartphone. Now you're getting into iOS 15. You won't be able to get that either. So I would recommend upgrading now, because you have now your 2 OSs removed from the latest one. Oh, maybe even 3. You said iOS 12.
12. Yeah, so it will
No,
be
it'll be 3
once
this
15
year.
So in the
comes out.
fall, it'll be 3 versions removed. Yeah. So I would, if if you're getting that far away from the newest OS, and now you're talking about apps are going to start to stop working.
That's already started.
Yeah. Security updates don't
Mhm.
come as frequently, and things, Apple doesn't, so they're not pushing optimizations to it. So it starts to get slower. It starts to degrade the battery health, all these things that start to break down.
Mhm.
But, you've had that for 6 years, 7 years. That's pretty impressive for a piece of hardware.
it's and it's
Anything.
I will also add it's a magical phone. I know Apple likes to talk about its devices being magical, but this one truly is, because at some point it developed cracks across the top because I dropped it one too
Yep.
many times, and it self-healed. Those cracks are gone.
Wow, how
I
about
don't
that?
know how that, I mean, it was just like you couldn't even feel it. It
Huh.
was just
That's the little known self-healing screen that Apple did put on some of its phones back in 2015, unbeknownst to anybody,
Yeah, I found
Fascinating.
it. So anyway, I love this so much. It has served me so well over the years. That's the other thing, is I have a fondness for devices that serve me well. And
Yeah.
but I know it is definitely, for all the reasons you mentioned. It is past time to.
I mean, there's one, if you like that design with the home button and that size screen, you can get the iPhone SE, which is basically that,
Yes.
but with newer parts.
Right. Right. Yep.
So
and I
you
think
don't
that
have
is
to
my
go
plan.
into the more expensive, they call it an all screen design without a home button and gestures and all that other stuff. And it's twice as much as it used to be.
Exactly. And yes, and even for an unlocked iPhone SE is like $550, I think.
Depending on your storage, it starts at $399.
Well, right, but I would get the highest
if you bump the storage, around there. And it's a really good phone. I used one for many months because I was too lazy to switch, and it's great.
guys make a
It's
very
just
good-
as fast as the new ones, and you can run all of the apps. The camera's really good. The storage is great. It's a really good phone.
I was just going to say, you guys make a very good point about upgrades. Upgrades and updating doesn't necessarily have to be to the latest and greatest.
Right.
Yes,
Mhm.
you could get an iPhone SE, but you could also, get an iPhone 10, which for you would be a noticeable upgrade, would keep you current with, the current versions of the operating system, and would not set you back as much. Well, you won't be able to get that probably for $399, but it's sort of that in between area.
Mhm.
And I think, back to what you were saying originally, Val, about, we were talking about companies and the upgrade policies that they have. There's always that cost benefit analysis. How much life can you get out of hardware and software versus at what point does it start to break down? Do you start to lose security, raise security concerns? Apps don't work. And maintenance costs start to exceed whatever you would save by not buying. And I think that's, why companies sort of settled on like the 3-year upgrade cycle for a lot of devices, because it's that sweet spot. They've gotten the bulk of the use out of the hardware. They could probably keep them going, as you can tell, with Apple hardware, at least for years and years, but there's diminishing returns there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think-
most I'm sorry, I'm just going to piggyback on that. Most Android
ahead.
manufacturers now guarantee 3 years. Google, Samsung, I forget a couple others, but it should be noted that Apple doesn't actually have an upgrade guarantee at all, which is curious. Like they don't say when you buy an iPhone 12 you're going to be able to get 3 years of upgrades. It's been at least 5 or around 5 for the last several generations now. But there's nothing on Apple's website that you're going to find that says you will be able to upgrade to iOS 20 when it comes out. Like Google guarantees it, Samsung guarantees it, other ones do. Apple, you just kind of have that trust that you're going to get upgrades for as long as you basically have the phone. Well, in your case, it's a little bit longer, but most people have it for around 4 or 5 years, and you're going to get the latest operating system every year.
Mm-hmm. We chatted a little bit about this before we went live, Val. I think you made a good point about, and Ken, this sort of speaks to your point too about, the enterprise 3-year upgrade cycle. I do wonder what is sort of what's the guidance when, in your case, Val, if there's a BYOD policy and I hate to spotlight you here, but if you've got this borderline ancient phone, like when can an enterprise say, you need to upgrade and this is a security risk, or this is, some kind of risk? How do you think that BYOD policies have sort of shaped the upgrade cycle, or BYOD policies rather?
Is that to me, Juliet, or Val, or either one?
Sure. Either one of you.
Okay. Well, I
That's
mean,
good.
Val, since you're the one with the dinosaur phone, would you like to take a stab at that?
What does BYOD mean? Can I?
Bring your own device.
Okay.
Val, this is all you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is an issue. And I think, honestly, it's a little bit more of an issue with Android than it is with iPhone, because, I do have, as Mike mentioned, I still do get upgrades, I can't go past iOS 12, but I'm still getting security updates.
They pushed one out a month ago.
Yes.
It was a pretty major one, and they pushed it to iOS 12 and iOS 14.
Yes, exactly. But I don't know how, Android may be the same. I'm actually not sure how that works. I know they don't upgrade. So anyway, it just sort of occurred to me. I don't think I personally am putting IDG at risk by running this old device, but what, at what point does it become a risk? And, would it be if I kept it running after iOS 15 came out? Would it be if I were on a 5-year-old, 6-year-old Android device? And what should my company, when does that come into play in terms of the company's management? And there's also just the, the experience of if employees are using their mobile devices to connect to company systems, just a performance issue. If they're trying to join video calls or whatever with ancient hardware, and if it degrades the experience so much, what is the company's responsibility? And should the company just either say, well, either you need to upgrade or we'll just get you a device that works, or I don't know where that all comes into play.
Right.
I was just thinking about that, and I think that's actually the solution, Val. And I think this is a very timely discussion, because I think a lot of companies right now, as we're coming out of the pandemic and dealing with hybrid workforces, are starting to take a look again at BYOD and whether it makes sense, and how to equip and make sure that your employees, many of whom may remain remote, have secure devices. And does that mean you require them to have something within the last 3 years or the last couple of years if it's Android? Do you say, okay, if you can't do that, we'll provide you with a device, but then there are limitations on what you can do with it? Or, you have to understand that it's a company device. And I just think there's a lot of conversations that are going to be had over the next year. And this goes beyond just phones. I mean, this is laptops and in terms of like equipping someone with a desktop machine. How do you do that if you're in Boston and someone's in California? Do you make sure that it's set up? There's a lot of remote setup that has to happen now too. So, this whole upgrade thing is something I think a lot of companies may have pushed off a lot of upgrades last year because of the pandemic. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you guys on a company iMac that's now 4 years old and it works perfectly fine. but it's slowing down, and at some point it'll need to be replaced. And then, who does that and who pays for it, and what are the rules around it?
The question I have is, will it be blue or green, Ken?
I like blue.
True.
I'm a blue guy. It's going to be blue if I have a choice. Knowing IT, it'll probably be gray. It's like corporate colors.
They don't
Well, will you even be able to get one with the chip shortage going on too?
Well, that's other issues. Yes, exactly. And this whole thing, we were sort of joking around about, I'm Mr. Upgrade and other people are not. I mean, 2 4-letter words: want versus need. What do you need? When do you need it? And I'm obviously in the want category. Do I need a new phone almost every year? Almost every year, Mike. I think I missed 1 year, but
I don't know about that. Not as long as I've known you.
but if I can afford it, and I enjoy the hardware part of these upgrades and things. And sure, I don't, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but for companies, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. And I think we discussed this maybe a little bit, probably like 8+ months now at this point, on the topic of M1 chips and Apple Silicon. And if you're a Mac shop, for example, and it's time to roll out upgrades to, this group of employees, is it worth it to give them the latest and greatest? In this case, it was, an M1 MacBook Pro, let's say, or like with perhaps some sort of risk that there might be some issues because Apple's working out. I'm just using Apple as the example in this case, because Apple, for example, is working out some kinks with its new hardware. And I kind of wonder where that sort of comes in to, I guess, upgrade policy, as it were. Like, how does that fit in when there is some new technology? And, when the shift to Apple Silicon, obviously huge, how do you make that cost benefit analysis? Do you wait until now? I guess this is kind of a rhetorical question, but if any of you have some thoughts about it, I'm interested to hear them.
I mean, I don't know anything about cost benefit analysis, but I will say
Go ahead anyway.
he does analyzing the benefits of upgrade of a new phone.
It's so in the case of the M1 Mac, I mean, Apple put in safeguards where there was a whole environment running in the background to make sure that your old apps worked. However, people who upgraded to Mojave, I believe, that was the first Mac OS to stop supporting 32-bit apps.
32-bit, yeah.
So that was an issue. So I think there are issues both with new hardware and with upgrading new software. And listen, if you have a competent IT department, you look at all that thing and you make a determination, because there are issues that could happen on a consumer level. You're basically okay. Yes, I had to upgrade to a new version of Photoshop, but Apple warned you for a long time before that happened. There aren't usually surprises. Like, you buy a new phone, it's like, oh my God, my favorite apps don't work. You will know. And in the case of the iPhone and iOS, it's very, very rare to drop support for previous generations of apps or services or whatever it is that you're using.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question remains, Val, what are you going to get? This is the place to figure it out.
Yes, exactly. Well, so I'm leaning heavily towards the iPhone SE, but one question I have, of course, is 5G, which the SE does not support, and
that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it seems like that's so far in the future before it really becomes.
But if you're going to have it for another 6 or 7 years,
that's
on to 7AG by then. It's like,
I mean, I could tell you right now that so the original iPhone launched with 3G service. Then it went to 3GS, which was faster, and then a couple of generations later, 4G. The difference between those three were huge, massive. 3G was barely, it took 30 seconds for a web page to
it was
load.
like running on a modem. I mean,
it was slow.
28K. Yeah.
3GS was faster, but still hard. LTE was mind-blowing in comparison. The difference between 5G and LTE can be as good, but it's not the kind of as good that's going to matter for day-to-day use. So if you're streaming movies, it'll be faster in games and things. I mean, I don't know what you use your phone to do, But LTE, which is what the SE supports, perfectly fine. Even better than fine for the most part. And listen, we're connected to Wi-Fi so much anyway. It doesn't really matter for those types of devices. The iPhone 12 supporting 5G, the iPad Pro supporting 5G. It's great. It future proofs those devices for the people who want to buy them, like Ken, who bought I think both of them. But the networks are there. I have the iPhone 12. I have Verizon, which has a nationwide 5G service. I tell you, I cannot tell the difference when I'm on LTE versus 5G right now. So the infrastructure needs to be built out. All the hubs and things need to be built, and the use cases are going to be for individual people very, very small. There's a lot of potential in 5G, particularly for this enterprise word we keep using, but it's not something you need to worry about.
Fair enough. Well, another question I have is about trade-ins. So I hang on to my hardware for so long that
you might have to pay Apple to take your phone.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But does Ken actually save money, for instance, by being able to trade his in and get some money back for it each time, or is the trade-in value low enough that it's still not going to make up for
with
the
Apple hardware? I've been pleasantly surprised, especially if it's the most recent phone. They do tend to hold their value. Yep. One quick equation that I'm looking at now, this is of course the week that the new iPad Pros are coming out, the ones with the mini LED and the updates. And I have a 2018 iPad Pro that Apple will give me $535 for as a trade-in.
Wow.
And that goes a long way toward offsetting some of the costs of the new device. I don't sit here with these things stacking up. It's in and out. So it helps. Now that's going to vary with other hardware. If you're trying to trade in a 3-year-old Dell computer, you may not get much for it, or HP or Android device, or maybe even an old iPhone 6. It's like at some point the hardware
you'll get something for that through Apple. It might be like $25, but they'll give you something for that phone if you want to trade it in. There's also something to look at is both Apple and a lot of other all of the carriers have upgrade programs. So what you do is you buy an expensive phone, say for $1,000, and you spread that cost over 24 months. There's no money up front, no interest rates. And most of them, and I used Apple's upgrade program, after 12 months, you can upgrade. So after making half of the payments, you can upgrade to a new device and they'll basically start the process over. So I pay for my iPhone 12. I laugh at Ken, but I get a new iPhone every year too. I don't get nearly as much stuff as he gets.
You're the editor of Macworld. You have an excuse built in.
Yeah, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But so you're essentially paying for half of the phone, and then you're able to trade it in. Apple gives you all that money back. They pay off the rest of the loan, and then it starts over. So, rather than going to eBay or to some other company to trade in your phone, it's just kind of an easier method to do it. You can do it with the iPhone SE too. Like it doesn't have to be an expensive phone. You can do it. They have the upgrade program for everything that they do.
Well, that's basically leasing versus buying. You're leasing the phone, which is if you want to deal with it that way, you always have an updated phone, with generally the latest, hardware, and you can run the latest apps and the iOS, the latest iOS. But you're always making a payment.
Yeah, we're all basically paying Apple until we die. It's just a matter of how
and how much.
Fair enough.
Jinx. Yeah, we've talked about this briefly before on a few other episodes, but yeah, I think I'm waiting until the fall to upgrade my iPhone personally. I think the purple iPhone 12 really, it was enticing, but I think I'm going to hold off until
I think I'm going to wait until the fall to upgrade my phone too, Juliet.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Is it going to be the 12S or 13? What is it?
Yes, and the answer is yes. I don't know, but yes. It's like
yeah, whatever it is, that is probably what I will end up doing. So, in case anyone was dying to know.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for calling in. I think it's all kind of fun and games, but I think that there is some valuable insight in considering, your BYOD policy and also just as a personal consumer, when is it time for you? So I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions or comments that we didn't get to during the live broadcast, but you still have them, leave them in the comments below. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk, where you can subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every single time we post a new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.